Hello and welcome. And I am sitting in my living room um, because that way you can see me better. And hopefully, you might be able to hear me a bit better as well. Um, uh, in this video, I want to talk about um, socialism and Christianity. And the um, the sort of interesting views that I've come across when dealing with British socialists, or certainly the socialists that I've been known to be around for quite some time. Now, whereas it's a great thing that um, they will go out and show solidarity with Muslims, which is a good thing, and it's the right thing to do because obviously as a Christian I would say, well, I would show any Muslim my love, in that Jesus said to love thy neighbour as the second commandment. When he was asked, what are the two greatest commandments? The first one is to love your God with all your heart, your mind and your soul, spirit. And the second one is to love thy neighbour. And as a Christian, I believe in doing that. I believe in showing my love towards those people who are not part of my faith. And therefore I recognise the concept of solidarity that lefties, socialists, and and other lefties, people on the left of politics, will show their support wholeheartedly with Muslims who are going through quite a bad time. And that's the right thing to do, and of course I endorse that view completely. It's something I believe in, and it's something which I would do myself, whether from a Christian point of view or from a socialist point of view. But I find that the socialists that I've known in this country, in the United Kingdom, or the ones I've met so far, have got some very, well, they like to think of themselves as being internationals, but then when they start speaking, they come out with things which I think show that they are thinking in a British way. What I mean by this is that when it comes to socialism worldwide, not all socialists are the same. You'll find in Europe that there are Christian socialists, or that they don't have a problem with people of faith getting involved with certainly left-wing politics. Yet in this country there seems to be this strange idea, and I don't know where it's come from, to be honest. Because if you read the Communist Manifesto, and I've read the Communist Manifesto, it's very short, you can read it quite quickly. Marx himself left a blank. He didn't say that people who believe in a god or people who believe in gods shouldn't have a role to play in the revolution. He deliberately left that blank in the Communist Manifesto so that anyone, regardless of whether they're an atheist or whether they are a believer in God or any gods, or whether they have spiritual beliefs, could get involved. And yet I find that although I can get on very well with a lot of the socialists that I know of a certain generation, and they're stuck in their ways, they can only see their own point of view, and their own point of view is what is right. They can't see anyone else's, and they can't see, well, hang on a minute, we may have got this wrong. Perhaps we're seeing this from a totally different point of view. And the party that I've been sort of involved with, off and on for the last couple of years, has these sorts of views. The whole, certainly within the branch that I have been involved with, maybe it might not be the same overall, but in the branch that I've been involved with, the majority of them are atheists. I've got nothing against atheists. There can be some good atheists, but what I have a great problem with is the fact that they say that, or they believe that only atheists can become socialists, which is wrong. And I know it's wrong, and despite the fact that they might be older than me, and they've been around the scene a lot longer than what I have, I know that this is wrong. Marx did not say that you had to become an atheist. I don't think I've not read every last bit of his writing, I must admit, and I hold my hand up to that one. But the Karl Marx that I've learned of, who, by the way, we're celebrating, now that we're in 2018, we're celebrating 2,000 years since his birth. But the Karl Marx that I have learned of didn't say that you had to be an atheist. He didn't say that people of faith couldn't get involved in the struggle. And actually left that space within the Communist Manifesto so that people of faith, or no faith, or whatever they were, could get involved. It doesn't say you must be this. If it did, well, that would be a different matter. I once had a socialist say to me, he knew that I was a Christian, and still knows that I'm a Christian, that Christians cannot be involved in socialism. That's interesting. So the socialism that was around before Karl Marx's time, was that socialism wrong or something? And Karl Marx didn't invent socialism. He may have come up with the concept of communism, or certainly communism came about after his time, but he didn't invent socialism, and socialism before Karl Marx was a very different situation. You had people who had spiritual beliefs, you had people coming from a Christian background. I mean, things like the Tolpodal martyrs, and I'm sorry I've said that wrong, were I think, Christians. I think there was probably even Christians involved in other movements as well. And certainly, I've certainly seen videos that have suggested that Karl Marx's ideas were based on older forms of socialism, which weren't completely pure as it is today. Whereby, politics is over here, religion is over there, and the two must never mix. But that's not always been the case, and I just find it quite irritating when I'm dealing with some of these older socialists that they have certain views that I consider to be wrong, and I'm not alone on this one. They're, if I was a Muslim and I was to declare myself a Muslim in amongst their midst, they wouldn't dare make fun of the Prophet Muhammad, or they wouldn't dare make fun of Allah, even though they don't believe that there is anything out there, or certainly these socialists don't believe that there's anything out there. They wouldn't dare make fun of Islam because it would be considered to be racist. Not that Islam is one race, by the way. It is just like Christianity. Anybody can join. Anybody can become a Muslim, just like anybody can become a Christian. But anyhow, I'll leave that one to perhaps another video about that sort of thing. They wouldn't dare make fun of, if I was a Muslim, they wouldn't dare make fun of my faith. But as a Christian, I've found that far too often, a lot of the socialists that I've been hanging around with think that it's in season, oh well, we'll make fun of his faith. Despite the fact that the Christians are being murdered worldwide, which of course is something I'll bring up in another video, and being persecuted for their faith. It's not just Islam. Christianity, perhaps at the moment, it's quite safe for me to go to church here in the UK, but there'll come a time when perhaps that won't be the case. But around the world at the moment, being a Christian is just a dangerous thing to be, as it is to be a Muslim. But that's something I'll bring up in another video, I think. But Tony then once asked a young man who was interviewing him, who is the greatest socialist? And the young man probably said something like Karl Marx or Eagles, or probably any other name from the history of socialism. But Tony Benn turned around to him and said, no, that's wrong. The greatest socialist in the history of the world is Jesus Christ. And the young man was shocked by this, apparently. Tony Benn, I think, if I remember rightly, was a Christian as well as being a member of the Labour Party and a socialist. Socialist in the true sense of the word, not in the Blairite sense, but a real socialist. And a great man and a person who I hold in a great lot of respect. And of course I've had anarchists who, on the whole, who know that I'm a Christian, have tried to post things up on my timeline on Facebook to genuinely try and encourage me that perhaps I should be going over to anarchism, because anarchists will say that Jesus Christ was the first anarchist because he stood up against the state. And he stood up and, so there is a sense that Jesus can be seen, for me as a Christian, obviously, he is the Son of God. For those socialists that want to see him as the first socialist, they will see him in that light, and for anarchists, they will see him as the very first anarchist, because he looked after the poor, he cared very much for the dispossessed, and stood up against the state. And there's the whole thing about the common purse. The common purse, it could be argued, could be the sense of perhaps for those who want to see it as something that shows that he was promoting an ideal of perhaps anarchism or socialism. because it's about things being held in common for the common good. And I just despair because you know, at the end of the day, they could put their. See, I find a lot of this, it's sort of like this sort of like the Mickey taking and this sort of like laughing at my faith business in front of me to be very childish, even coming from men and women who are much older than me and who should know better, that they talk about creating a better world and they want to see socialism coming into being. And yet underneath it all, they make all these petty little jokes about my faith and everything, and then wonder why they don't see me for a very long time, or why I don't, they may lose track of me or lose contact with me. My faith is very important to me, it's part of who I am. I don't personally see there being a problem with me being involved in politics, because I'm not the only Christian to be involved in politics. And I'm certainly not the only person of faith to be involved. Muslims and Sikhs and Hindus all get involved in politics. It's not a problem. And I guess that's that British thing. Everything has to be put into a box. You have to think in one way, and you can't think in any other way. And that's about having control, and about trying to state, well, this is how things are. And you either get with the program or you're complete weirdo or nutcase, which is what I feel as though they're basically saying towards me. Just because I have a spiritual belief. This shouldn't be a problem. I don't attack them for being atheists. I would probably, if they wanted to see the truths that I believe in and understand those things, and I could give them plenty of evidence to show them that there is hard evidence to show that these things actually have happened, then I would do. But I don't attack them for being the way that they are, but they should show maturity and do the same towards me. In the end, if I look at the branch that I am sort of a part of, the majority of the people who go there, and they've been going there for the last couple of years, and even before then, but the last couple of years that I've been going are of a certain age. And there is that worry that obviously, because they're all getting on a bit, they're not really getting new people in. The youngest person who has been going all the time since 2013 has been me. I'm in my 40s. Well, I'm in my 40s now. I wasn't back then, obviously, but and they've had people who have come and gone, who don't stay for long, who perhaps have been younger than me. And it's like, well, they can't seem to see that the problem, that some of their views and some of the ways in which they think are putting people off, and they're not getting those people in, and sooner or later, it's a sad reality, but if the older members were to die off, there'd be no branch left. And it's sort of like, not wanting to see the truth of what the future can be like. It could be quite grim as far as this branch is concerned. It might be better in other places, but that's just how it is here with this particular socialist party. And perhaps they should be reading up on many different versions of socialism to see that there's not one fixed thing. There's not one fixed viewpoint. You know, from what I've learned about Karl Marx, he started out life as a Jewish man. That was obviously how, the faith that he was born into. Then he became a Christian, and then became an atheist. But I don't think in any of his writings did he actually ever say, well, no, you can't be part of this if you've got spiritual belief. He knew that there had been people who had a spiritual belief, who had been involved in socialism. Like I say, socialism was around even before his time. And it existed in many different forms. And it's sort of like, well, how are they so narrow-minded? These are people supposed to be enlightened and supposed to be quite educated and all of these things. And yet their way of thinking is so narrow-minded and so fixed on one particular point of view. A friend of mine said to me the other day on Facebook, why is it I'm still involved? And I like some of the people who go to this party. I genuinely do. As people, I think some of them are quite nice. And I like some of the subject matters that they talk about each week. But I don't like their particular narrow-minded point of view when it comes to socialism. And that thereby everybody else is wrong, and if you can't get with the program, you're a nutcase. And we're going to make fun out of you. That's very childish. And it's quite sad that these people are perhaps in their 70s, 80s, and they're behaving in this way. And they're talking about wanting to have a revolution, and the only way in which you can actually have a revolution is if you change your way of thinking. Yes, it could be easy to, when it comes down to it, to perhaps overthrow the system, but if your way of thinking isn't altered, then you're just going to continue, you're just going to rebuild up the system as it was before. So for me, I think that a lot of them do need to change their way of thinking. And if they're wanting to get in younger members, they've got to think about, well, how do we get in younger people? How do we get them interested in our politics? I have seen many of these people come and go and last for a short period of time and then off again. And maybe they need to realise that if they don't want things to continue down this line, then they have to change their way of thinking. I have sometimes I've put it in the neck from some of my Christian friends for getting involved, but for me, I believe that this is one way in which, as a Christian, you can go on a practical level and show God's love to other people. I don't see there being a problem in getting involved, and there has been a history of people of faith who have gotten involved in politics, as I said, but I think if we are to have a proper revolution and if things are to change for the better, then people's minds and hearts need to change. You cannot keep on thinking in the same old ways. Because even if you overthrow the system, like I say, unless your heart's and mind change, then you're still going to continue down the same old path. In the same way that in the book 1984, it shows quite clearly that they, in the book, they got rid of the old capitalist system, but then they replaced it with an even greater tyranny. And perhaps that's a reflection of what of the 20th century, how communism in Russia and in Eastern Europe started off okay. I mean, under Lenin, communism was doing quite well, and then of course Stalin came along, who had been part of the Bolshevik party, but he created an even greater tyranny than what was the Tsarist Russia had ever been. And perhaps Orwell, when he wrote the book, had these ideas going through his head, because it was, he was writing in 1984 at a time when the Cold War was starting up, and it obviously seen the rise of Stalinism, if you call it Stalinism, and perhaps this is the worrying thing, and perhaps this is why certain people within the party that I've been involved with don't particularly care for the works of George Orwell, because it's too close to the bone. That the overthrow system is not a problem in the end. We're getting to a point now, I think, whereby demonstrations are happening all the time. Trade union actions are on the rise again, and there is a real sense of that people are not wanting to put up with things as they were, but will they end up with anything better? That's the real question. And it can only come about when people's minds are changed. It's not just a question of, oh well, we're just too for the system. You've got to have a real change of mindset, I believe. One of the worrying things from my point of view is that under Stalin, he had a lot of the churches shut down, and even some of them were destroyed, and he made it almost illegal to be a practicing Christian in Russia under his reign, and so was the case for quite a number of years, even after his demise. And in Eastern Europe, Christians had a really bad time with it, and surely if they want to, I've heard in many of the discussions about how they want to create a utopian society, and in order to create that, you have to have freedom, you have to have the choice. You cannot try and stamp on people like the symbol of the boot stamping on somebody's face forever, which is from 1984, which is about tyranny. But ultimately, that's what the book is about. But if people don't have the freedom to believe in what they believe in, or to live their lives how they want to live them, and if we're going to create a sort of like another, um, not a utopian society, but end up creating a sort of dystopian society, then is that any better than what we've got now? What we've got now is not good by no means, but people are desperately wanting a better world, and a better world I think can be created, but it has to be created whereby people are free to choose what they choose, to be free when it comes to their sexuality or their lifestyle choices, but to be free to choose, if they choose spirituality, then they should be free to choose that. But if they choose not to be that way, then they should be free. And that's my point of view, that, I desperately I want to see a better world for everybody, but it can only happen if we have a better world that whereby people are free and not living under some sort of new tyranny. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.